Phonology. Phonology is the study of the sound system of a language. The word phonology is also often used to refer to the actual sound system of a language. So for example, the phonology of English. The basic unit of phonology is the phoneme. A phoneme is a phone that is significant by itself to produce a change in meaning. Let's have an example. In Tagalog, we have misa, which means mass, and mesa, which means table. Notice that the change from E to E produced a change in meaning. When the E in misa was changed to mesa, from mass, it became table. So that's what we mean by phonemes. They are significant enough, they are phones that are significant enough to produce a change in meaning in similar words. Here's an example from Cebuano. Note that the change from E to E in Cebuano did not produce a change in meaning. Misa means mass. Mesa also means mass. So the change from E to E did not produce a change in meaning. And in fact, you cannot find two similar words in Cebuano where the E and the E will produce a change in meaning. So in order to show that two phones are actually two separate phonemes in a language, you need to find two similar words where they will produce a change in meaning. In the case of Cebuano, you cannot find one. Okay? In fact, in Cebuano, they have to say la mesa. So mesa is not enough because mesa still means mass in Cebuano. Let's consider the k and k in Tagalog. The voiceless, unaspirated, velar plosive versus the voiceless, aspirated, velar plosive in Tagalog. In Tagalog, kam-kam means splendor. In Tagalog, kam-kam also means splendor. So the change in ka and ka are not significant enough to produce a change in meaning. And in fact, in Tagalog, you cannot find two similar words where ka and ka produces a change in meaning. Now, if you could find two similar words in Tagalog where the ka and ka produce a change in meaning, then you could say that they are separate phonemes, but you cannot. Okay, you cannot find two words in Tagalog where the ka and the ka produce a change in meaning. However, in Finontok, which is a language in the Bontoc province, ka and ka are significant enough to produce a change in meaning. We have found two words, kam-kam, which means to get, and kam-kam, which means to plunder. So notice that the change from ka to ka, the change from unaspirated to aspirated, produced a change in meaning. In the case of the voiceless, velar plosive. Okay, the change from unaspirated to aspirated produced a change in meaning. So ka and ka are considered separate phonemes in the Finontok language because we were able to find two similar words in which the ka and the ka produce a change in meaning. Class, the misa and the mesa, they are exactly the same except in the two sounds that we are comparing. They are called minimal pairs or pares minimal. Minimal pairs are two words that are exactly the same except in the place where the two phones, the two sounds are being compared. I think in your K to 12 you studied pares minimal and the example was pala and bala. Pala means shovel and bala means bullet. The change from p to b produced a change in meaning. So that is pares minimal. So you studied pala and bala. The change from p to b produced a change in meaning. That's what we mean by pares minimal or minimal pairs. Minimal pairs are also called identical environments because they're exactly the same except in those two sounds. Now, phonemes produce contrast in identical environment. When we say contrast, there's a contrast in meaning. And here are other examples of minimal pairs in English. We have sip versus zip. Sip and zip are exactly the same except where you have the s and the z. And they produce a change in meaning. So we know that s and z are separate phonemes in English because sip and zip are minimal pairs and they have different meaning. We also have choke versus joke. Notice that we do not care about spelling. Even though you have two letters, C and H, versus one letter, J, it's not the spelling or the letters that we consider, it's the sounds. So choke and joke are minimal pairs. They show us that ch and j are separate phonemes in English. Then we have right and ride. Here we show that t and d are separate phonemes. We also have pin versus bin. So p and b are separate phonemes as shown by these minimal pairs. We also have scent versus tent. These are two words that are exactly the same except in the place where you have the s and the t. We also have the thigh versus thy. These two words show that the soft th and the hard th are separate phonemes in English. Then we have moth and math. These two minimal pairs show that a and a are separate phonemes in English. Here are examples of words that are not minimal pairs. Stand and sand. Okay, we have the S and T. We have the the S and T and S. Okay? These are two separate sounds. We have several sounds already, not just two pairs of sounds. So they're not minimal pairs. We also have smile and smile. These are not minimal pairs because smile is not a word. There should be a change in meaning. Okay, then we have will and wilt. These are not minimal pairs because in the first one we have l, but in the second one we have lt. We have two sounds already, so they're not minimal pairs. Then we also have color and color. These have differences. They differ in spelling, but they're actually the same word. There's no change in sound. So these are not minimal pairs. Note that in Mandarin Chinese class, p and b, k and g, t and d are not separate phonemes because for the Chinese, they are the same sound. So that's what we mean by phonemes and minimal pairs. Again, phonemes produce a change in meaning because of their sound. The change in sound produced a change in meaning in two identical environments, which we call minimal pairs. So these are phonemes and minimal pairs.